So we came up with tourism because there is a big heritage of tourism here. Material was more like castle and buildings and things like that. Earl, it's more for all like storytelling and songs and tunes and then well, dancing we don't really, but we got heritage is linked to the past, so the Irish past and all its history. We also put it as culture. We put it as emigration, because we know there is lots of people which have gone and come back.
We started out by basically talking about what we thought heritage was, and we came up with like a list of words of things like books and recipes and buildings. And then we kind of talked about things we like to see, like if we prefer museums or castles, and kind of said we prefer castles because you get more of the experience. Like in museums, things are normally locked away behind glass boxes. And then we kind of came up with 5 main areas of things we liked, and books was one of the most important because it's not just information you get from it, you get like things like the smell and the touch and to know that like people have already used them, and with things like the text, it might be different styles of writing and different phrases that we've kind of lost because they aren't really documented as much. Things like culture, stuff like songs and stories, they get lost or changed a lot along the way. Like if somebody dies without passing on the story, that's gone forever, even if they might have heard that from lots of generations beforehand. We talked about buildings then and about castles, and again how you just got a really strong experience by just being in the building. And we talked about how in King's John Castle, like it was Vikings there first and then Kings took over, and they'd be 2 very different lifestyles, and to maybe find out more about the normal people who lived there, not just the king.
And maybe about the people who built houses in the courtyard of King's John's Castle later on.
And like servants and like what food they ate instead of the king.
When it reopens, you will get all that.
Oh, good.
Including the houses, I believe.
And then we wanted more information on the ordinary life of people. Like rich people would have been able to hire people to paint portraits of them, but the poor people wouldn't, so lots of the information about them is lost. And things such like slang or recipes they had, that's all sort of lost, so we like the idea of looking into that more.
Abstract notions of heritage like humour and attitudes, accents, and how do you display that rather than just artefacts and stuff like that. I mean, how do you present humour of 1950s Limerick to someone? And I guess oral history is a big part of that, and not just getting people to talk about famous events or famous people, but innocuous things about their lives, about a hairdresser just talking about what her life was back then and telling her anecdotes, and you very rarely see that because we usually kind of focus on the winners of history, the famous people, the big events, whereas culture and heritage isn't just that, it's sort of the small things as well.
Talking about cultural heritage, you know, what it is, and it's basically something that defines us from other people, and what we value as heritage. And we came up with industry, music, stories, people, oral histories, very important. Architecture, music, and what has been lost that you'd like to have back. I think architecture, buildings that disappear, but it's also, I mean, I kind of feel that it's inevitable. I mean, things have, with buildings, only have a sort of a limited lifespan, so I mean, things do need to be demolished. You can't keep everything, but what is important is that things are documented, things that can't be kept, I think.
If you want to hear or look for the app, you can find it on the Limerick website, or there is gonna be like posters or leaflets out, and there is QR codes on the Limerick posters or leaflets. And what we want to do is kind of like, it's like a competition. So they ask you a question and you need to find the places where you're going. So there is like number on the maps, and after it's just a question. So for example, the first one would be the tourist office, and the question to find the tourist office is I am known worldwide. And for example, the second one would be I never move but I mark history, and it's the statue which is on the Sarsfield Bridge. And it's like, it keeps on going like that. So for example, there is a broken earth, is number 4, so you just have the picture of a broken earth, and you have to find the monuments which are on the map, so you have a trail like that, and you can do it with your app and answer the questions. So it's like a competition, and you enter, we don't know the prize win, but you go from the tourism office and you come back to the tourism office. And there is an option as well on the app, and you can create your own trail, so you can like put it after the tour, you can enter it.
Yeah, well, the idea is that if you're going to a museum, that you'd be able to pick up a physical book. So basically, in this case we have 3 books, so it might be the upper class book, the middle class or the lower class book, and that you get a physical sense of what the life for these people living in this or museum represents. So, and using a set of glasses, such as like augmented reality glasses, you could use the book then to go into a room and be able to visualize the scene around the room, depending on which book you have. So everyone's book tells a different story and a page. So basically, as you flick the page, you get a different story, and as you go into each room, you get a different story. So basically, and there's things like music and sense of smell or something. There's those things as well, like that.
If I want to have a different experience, I can choose a little bit, but if I want to have a different experience, I need to physically change the book to get the lower class experience. Or
to get the bubonic plague,
yeah. and then there'll be smells as well, like that book is going to stink, this book is going to be very nice. Just that there kind of is.
And like everyone really have their own little experience depending on what book they have, what room they're in. So there's hundreds of different options depending on page, room, book, and so on.
Like in this room that we sketched out, the room has a lute in it, and if you have the lower class book and on the glasses, you see someone cleaning the lute, and if you put on the high class one, you see someone playing it.
Well, we've already started in the council GPSing Mount St. Lawrence graveyard, and we've got the GPS locations of each headstone, a photograph of each headstone, a data record of everything that's written on the headstone, and then we'll be going into the community hopefully and trying to get other bits of information, oral histories about family members, photographs, videos, text, newspaper clippings, and connect them then to the reference number and the photograph, and connect them all together. And what we were talking about then is creating an app that would capitalise on that concept.
So what you do is you download the app, you go to the website on the phone, so you say it's Limerick City Council, it says download app, so if you're using an iPhone, Android, whatever, you just download it, and then you put the details in, and you get a reference number, and then you get a Google map on it. So you navigate your way through to the gravestone where you are, so you can zoom in as well as you say a starting point here or there. That's where it's supposed to be. And then once you get there, there will be an RFID tag on the gravestone. So all you do is you hold the phone. There'll be a guideline, the angle, how to hold the phone, blah blah blah. And then once the phone recognises the tag, that'll augment data, like a 3D version of it, like a time machine, time capsule on the Mac. So you can just, flick through and you get all this details.
Say, there in this particular headstone, there's 2 people buried there, Bobby Smith, Maggie Smith. So you have a list of the names that are on the headstone, and say you pick Bobby Smith, you just open up him. You have 2 options. You have a timeline or view his connections. So the timeline would just be from his birthdays to when he died, and you can just flick through. So, say in 1987, there's a photograph. You just go to 1987, and that photograph will be there. You can kind of flick through his life, basically.
Corpse book. Instead of Facebook.
And the other option then is to go into his connections. So, say here, Maggie Smith is also buried in the graveyard, or maybe his cousin is buried 3 graves up, and you can see his kind of family tree of people who are buried in the graveyard.
Well, the idea behind this is, it was a while ago, about a year ago, I was thinking about places I used to live, and for 4 years I lived in a town, and I used Google Street View to try and find these old places I knew, and the places I used to walk, and only about, I think I left when I was about 7. And there's a place that I remember was this rambling Victorian church, which was actually quite. It didn't look like anything because it was just, this terrace, but behind it was just this huge complex of buildings. And I tried to find it on Street View, and couldn't find it. It had been demolished. And I tried to find out photos of it or any information about it, and it was faded. Yeah. So the idea is kind of an interface or a site where people can submit photographs, because I'm sure that there are photographs out there of buildings, of streets, where they can identify or use the kind of location, and you can access these photographs. People are encouraged to upload photographs, information,